Okay, and the last thing is the center of the orb. Okay, so we do not need the fireball anymore, so let's delete it. Okay, so we need something similar to this pattern within the ability orb to signify that it is the ability orb that you can obtain to increase your impulse abilities level. Okay, just checking OBS. Alright, so let's create the innermost layer. Okay, now let's create the outer layer. Okay, using a slightly darker shade. Okay, we'll try not to use the exact same color as the other sprites for impulse. Okay, seems like we need to use something darker. So let's try this shade. Okay, we can always change the color after we are done with this. Okay. Okay, so if you notice on the right, the zoom out version, the pattern isn't that obvious. Okay, so that means we need to use an even darker shade. Okay, sometimes this requires a few rounds of trial and error. So to get the right amount of shading for each sprite. Okay, so if you look at the zoom out version on the right, okay, the pattern in the center is now much more visible. Okay, but something that's not so visible is the small amount of glow on the top right hand corner, which is this. So that means we have to make it even brighter. Okay, last but not least, okay, we'll add a center pattern right in the center of the ability orb. Okay, similar to how the projectile looks like. Okay, so that is our ability orb over here. Okay, so besides the ability orb, okay, there's just one more thing we need to do for the new impulse ability, which is the icon that you will see when you press the V key, which shows what ability you currently have. Okay, so it'll be easier for me to show you. So let's go back to Unity just for a quick moment. Okay, so when you start a game, okay, on the top left hand corner, you can see your current ability and its current level. Okay, so if you press the V key, which stands for Void, okay, you see the current abilities that you have and their levels. Okay, so now it shows 1 besides Fireball. That means your Fireball is currently at level 1. Okay, so this is the icon for fireball, but we also need to create one for impulse. Okay, so let's go back to Photoshop. Okay, so you might have noticed by now, but the icon for fireball is actually just the pattern within the ability orb, which is, okay, for example, this is the fireball icon. Okay, so for impulse, we will just use this center pattern within the ability orb. Okay, so let's first create the image for the ability orb. Let's see. Okay, this is the image for the fireball ability orb. Okay, we'll drag and drop it over here. Okay, to make sure that it is on the same X and Y axis. And we'll save as the impulse ability orb. Okay, and now for the vault icon. Okay, the vault icon might have a different width and height, so let's see if we can reuse the image file. Okay, so it seems that we can reuse the image file. Okay, now that we have both of the images, the next thing we can do is to export them. Okay, so usually I'll just use my Apple script to automate the process. Okay, this allows me to export huge amount of images while I do something else. So it saves a lot of time. Okay, so this is the icon and this is the orb. Okay, if you were wondering about the iPad Retina and the normal folders, okay, that's because when I first started making games, I wrote this automation script for mobile games. Okay, but it's a good thing that it applies to any type of image. Okay, now all we have to do is just to copy and paste the image files to the game project directory, and we can add it to the game. 32. Okay, so let's go back to Unity. Okay, checking OBS. Alright. Okay, so we should have the sprites over here. Okay, just changing some settings so that it will apply for pixel art sprites. Okay, now all we have to do is to add the ability orb and the icon to the game. So let's do the ability orb first. Okay, we'll use the existing ability orb for fireball and modify it to become the impulse ability orb. Okay, we'll change the sprite to use the new sprite that we have just added, and we'll change the ability type to impulse. Okay, and now we can create the orb for impulse. Okay, and so that's the ability orb for impulse. Next is the icon that you will see when you press the V key, which is just right beside your C. Okay, so we'll do the same thing. We'll reuse the icon for fireball and we'll change it to become the icon for impulse. Alright, so we have the newly created ability orb and icon. So the last thing that we need to do is to link both of them to the HUD. 3. Okay, fireball, wave, fireball, heavy wave, and for this we'll use the impulse. Okay. Okay, and lastly we will link the ability up to the loot manager so that it will drop the impulse ability up. Okay, we can also do so by dragging and dropping. Okay, and that should do it. So now if we want to make enemies drop the impulse ability up, you can do a little cheat code over here, but it's just for testing. Okay, by going to the loot manager, okay, and changing this to this or -1. Okay, so it will always get the last ability up, which is the ability up for impulse, and we want to make sure that it always drops, so we'll change the percentage chance to always drop 100%. Okay, so now let's test the ability orbs and the icon. Okay, so if we press the V key over here, okay, it shows the icon, which is rather small. And it shows the current level of it. Alright, so as you can see now, enemies can drop the impulse ability orb. Okay, so if you get it, it will increase your experience bar for your impulse ability slightly. Okay, looks like I'm about to die. Okay, so let's restart. Okay, seems I'm about to die anyway. Okay, by the way, for impulse, it also works in the same way other abilities does, in the sense that especially for ghosts, it will only damage ghosts if they are not face out into the background. Okay, if they are face out into the background, impulse will not damage ghosts as well. Okay, so you might have noticed by now, impulse is a good ability to use to do damage against multiple enemies, but it is much harder to use in the sense that you have to grab, or you have to understand the timing correctly. Okay, you have to know when the blast happens, so you don't get caught up in it and you don't waste your mana.